Hej, det her det er Alan Thornett. Han er en af de ledende engelske kammerater i forhold til spørgsmålet om EU og holdning til EU. Og det har han efterhånden været et par årtier. Og selvom vi er dybt uenige i forhold til lige præcis Brexit-spørgsmålet, så er han i hvert fald meget vidende i forhold til, hvad kommer der til at ske nu og fremadrettet. So Alan, just to be clear, what is going to happen now? What's the plan of Theresa May with the Brexit and so far?
Well, it's a very good question, and it can't yet be fully answered. But what can be said is that it represents the biggest shift to the right in British politics since Margaret Thatcher was elected and defeated a Labour government in 1979, with all the consequences of that. It might even be a bigger shift to the right, but anyway, time will tell on that one. But the Theresa May government is a long way to the right of the David Cameron government. We call it a partial UKIPised government. UKIP is the racist nationalist UK independence party that has existed for the last 10 years, mainly in order to advocate exit from the EU. And essentially, the Theresa May government has adopted the politics of UKIP, not entirely, but mostly. And that takes the form of two things, really. One is the racist agenda. The most disastrous thing that has happened in the aftermath of Brexit is a huge increase in racism, more openly expressed racism, more state racism, and also a big increase in racial attacks on migrants living in Britain, in particular migrants from the EU and Polish migrants in particular. So it's a big shift to the right, right across the board. The new government contains new ministers from the Tory right and from the leading Brexit campaigners. A Brexit campaigner now heads the Department of Exit from the European Union, and the plans that they're putting forward for exit from the European Union is the most hardline type of exit available. The debate amongst those of us that lost the referendum, we advocate, and most of the left advocates, what we would call a soft Brexit. We accept that Britain's out, but we're trying to get it out on the least dangerous and right-wing terms, which means that we advocate, most on the left advocate, to stay in the single market, to stay in the Common Customs Union, and to retain the movement of peoples within the single market. The May government is totally opposed to that. They argue that the main mandate that they received from the referendum was a cut in immigration, and the only way that they can fulfil that mandate, which they were determined to do, is a total break from the EU and from the single market, and therefore from the movement of peoples within the single market. And so the model, this means that all they have, either they can get concessions out of the EU, which is going to be impossible, but it means they will have to fall back after 2 years on ITO conditions, harsh ITO conditions of tariffs, tariff wars and everything else. And the model that is clearly emerging is to establish Britain as an offshore tax haven from Europe, something like Singapore, but not with the standard of living of Singapore, with low taxation, low corporation tax, very low corporation tax, and very low labour regulation. In other words, new levels of exploitation in order to compete with the rest of the world. So that is really the prospect that we have. It has to be said, although Parliament has voted to trigger the opening of negotiations, which is it has to do, which is right, there is a very long way to go in this process. At the moment, the Tory party is united simply because Brexit is now going to happen, but the whole process is very dangerous to them because the EU elites have not yet spoken on their terms, and when they offer their terms, then the Tory party is going to be split on it. The whole thing will open again, and if you ask me what will the situation be in 2 years' time, it's absolutely impossible to tell. At the moment, I am, and most of the left is, opposed to calling for a second referendum because it's totally undemocratic. It's what the EU elites do, and we have to respect the outcome of the referendum. But who knows what can happen in 2 years' time when the harsh realities of all this impact on the population as a whole, we just don't know. So that's the best I can summarise where we are at the present time.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.